guys, I'm Nashwa. Welcome back to my channel. I'm back in front of my bookshelf, and today I'm going to be talking about the March Trilogy, which is a work of non-fiction, a series of graphic novels talking about the American Civil Rights Movement. One of the previous comments that I got on my video last time was that the voice wasn't picking up properly, so that's why the mic is sitting at this really awkward angle. It's just going to be here. So sorry if that's a hindrance to you, and I really hope the focus is all right. So anyway, for those of you who aren't aware, the American Civil Rights Movement was a movement that took place in the United States to end segregation. So black people and other minorities can have the same rights as their white counterparts. This basically means that having access to movie theaters, being able to occupy the front rows of buses, and of course the right to vote. So this series follows John Lewis, who was a civil rights activist. He was a leader in the movement, and then he went on to become a congressman in the United States. And this book basically begins with Obama's inauguration in January 2009 when he became the president for the first time. And it sort of juxtaposes that moment with the entire civil rights movement because it shows how far the movement has come from segregation, that a black man can become a president, and there is still a long way to go. So basically I will not be holding this up during the entire video because it's kind of heavy and I have no upper body strength. So I will be pulling them out of the box set and talking about them one by one. Now as the series progresses, the books do get bigger and bigger, so I might not be able to hold all of them up, but hopefully I will be able to. So the first one follows John Lewis from his childhood up until the point where he joined the civil rights movement and became an active voice for asking for equality. As a child who grew up in Alabama, he saw that there was a lot of inequality, there was a lot of segregation. They weren't being given the same facilities as their white counterparts. In one instant, he talks about his uncle who lived in Ohio, and his mother made him visit his uncle. And as they were driving across the state lines, he could really see that some states were very sort of like tense to drive in, and he could see his uncle getting really tense. And he mentions this and says that Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, these were the states we had to be really careful in as we made our way north. And once they reached Ohio, his uncle sort of like relaxed, and then he became more relaxed. And when he visited Ohio, he basically saw that his uncle was living with in a neighborhood where white people were his neighbors, and that is something that he hadn't seen before. So from that moment on, he really became interested in the civil rights movement. And one of the people who inspired him to join this movement was Dr. Martin Luther King, because his speeches would be broadcasted on the radio, and whatever Dr. King said made a lot of sense in John Lewis's mind, because his words, in his own words, sort of liberated him, that his words gave him the power to follow in what he thought was right. So growing up, John Lewis wanted to attend the Troy State University, which was still segregated and it didn't really allow any black students, and he really wanted to attend. So he wrote a letter to Dr. Martin Luther King asking for help, asking for support, and he didn't really expect a response, except that he did get a letter, and that was the first time that he met Dr. King. And Dr. King told him that, okay, we understand that you want to go to this university and we can sue it, but you have to be prepared that your family might be harassed, your house will be burnt down, there will be a lot of violence around you. So are you sure this is something that you want to do? And understanding that, he didn't really get permission from his parents because he was still a minor, but he still joined the movement. And when he joined the movement, one of the things that he learned from there was the policy of non-violence, that they followed in the footsteps of Gandhi, who was basically a man in India who used non-violence to free an entire country of people. And getting inspired by Gandhi, he basically says that non-violence can be used to free us from the evil of racism, from the evil of poverty, and the evil of war. And after that, he started attending workshops promoting this non-violence, learning tricks as to not to react when provoked. So they would have these meetings with white people who would constantly be using racial slurs against them just to build resistance. So that they don't really react. One of the first places that they attempted to desegregate were the lunch counters, where they were not allowed to eat, where white people would eat all the time but black people not be served. So the movement started, and they would just go to these restaurants and sit at the lunch counters and ask to be served. And time after time, they would be refused. And initially they were only refused, but after a few attempts, there would be a mob waiting for them. They would be kicked out, the counters would be closed, and the police would get involved. And as the unrest grew, there were a lot of instances where these people were beaten up, they would be put in jail, and more protesters would come and join the protest. They would go and occupy the seats left by the people previously. So they kept on doing this as a way of making a point that we desire to be served because we should have the same rights as the white people. And here I just want to talk about something really interesting, that initially when these protests started, they weren't really hurting anyone, but one of the first responses was that this is not the right way to protest. When the police and the authorities would get involved, they would be basically told that this has gone too far and we should all just calm down and we should pray together. And the responses of the civil rights leader was that fine, we can pray together, but how about eating together? So basically this is the content of the first book, from his childhood up until the point of his university, and then joining the movement and demanding to be served at lunch counters where white people would eat all the time. Now the second one basically goes much deeper into the violence, and we can see a lot of it come onto the page and really understand the total brutality of the police, of the people who would get involved, of the mobs who would be waiting in different places to sort of beat these people up. And we start off with an attempt to desegregate places like movie theaters, where the civil rights activists would basically go and asked to be given a ticket for a movie that they want to see. And they would constantly be turned away and told them that they don't really sell tickets to black people. We start from there, and then we go on this journey of the Freedom Riders, which are basically an attempt to occupy the front seats of the buses by black people. They were joined by a lot of their white counterparts who would sit in the back of the buses, and the black people would sit in front, something which was against the law. And time after time, these buses were burnt, these buses would have a mob waiting for them. And the movement became so big that each time the Freedom Riders would get on the bus, there was always a chance of extreme violence, because they would have hundreds of people just waiting for them to beat them up. Sometimes what would happen was that everybody else would be asked to get off the bus, everyone who wasn't black, and the black people would be made to stay on the bus. And once they were made to wait, they would basically be sitting there for hours and hours on end. And once they attempt to leave, they would be hit. And you can see a lot of that like really coming on the page, where it goes completely dark, depicting how much violence that these people had to endure. Now halfway through the second book, we can see the process becoming more political, and the Freedom Riders noticed that not only can they peacefully protest, but they need someone from the government on their side. And there became a lot of like dialogues with the policymakers, with the government, with President Kennedy at the time, to sort of like allow this movement to take place. And there was constantly a lot of negotiation taking place, where the government would propose something and the civil rights activists would not be happy with them, so they would send it back and ask for more fair points or more negotiations. And that basically included restrictions on voting, because Kennedy administrator said that, oh sure, black people can vote, but they also said that they need to be educated to a certain point. And because of the poverty that they had, that wasn't something that was really something that could really take place. So they struggled a lot with that too. And this one basically focuses on the speech that John Lewis had to deliver in Washington, in the same place where MLK made the I Had a Dream speech. And we go through this process of him writing a very aggressive speech, and like really emphasizing on the unfairness of this. And the leaders from the civil rights movement were like, wait, you can't really make this speech, because this one antagonizes the people in power. And as unfair as the treatment is right now, we need their support to sort of reform policy. So John Lewis wasn't really happy with the way that he was being told this, but he made a speech, and the emphasis of that was that one man and one vote. And then we move on to the third one, which is basically the longest one and took me longer to read. And by that I mean that this one took me 2.5 days as opposed to like 1 day each. And this is the one which is basically heavier in terms of graphics. We are being given a lot of information, which someone who is not from America, who's not really aware of the full steps and the history, was a lot for me to take in. But from this one, we know that President Kennedy has been assassinated, and now there's a new player and a new partner in town, which is President Johnson, and he has to basically sort of deal with the civil rights activists and give them their demands that they're asking for. So this one started off with the political process, and it really highlights the process of voter registration, because it draws up instances of people wanting to vote, where a white person would basically go to get registered, and they would be given like extreme assistance and sure, here are all the forms and everything. But then when a black person would go, firstly they would be not responded to well. Like they would be like, are you sure that this is something that you want to do? And once they were given the forms, they were given tests, essays, and really hard questions. And I saw instances of that, and I was really surprised that this is something that was done. And this one basically ends with the struggle to cross the bridge and go to Selma to get people to vote. And in the first instances, we see that John Lewis was beaten up, his head was injured, and he was still making all these speeches. And then we saw how influential Dr. Martin Luther King was. So this was the one that I struggled with the most in terms of how much information it had, but I think this was the one which also had the most impact on me, because a lot of the scenery and imagery that's there, with a bridge of people crossing the road and they're basically being met by resistance, is a scene that unfortunately we are all too familiar with. I mentioned the juxtaposition with Obama's inauguration, and it was used as a tactic to break up tension in all of these three books, because different scenes would sort of like be used to break up the violence. Because as soon as we noticed a mob scene where the Freedom Riders got off the bus and they were basically beaten up, immediately we would have a scene from the Obama inauguration where Aretha Franklin would be singing, or something really powerful would be happening. And similarly, the march to Selma to register for voting was broken up with moments where Barack Obama basically gave a presidential postcard to John Lewis. So I feel like, given the political climate, this is a very, very important book to talk about. As far as the Black Lives Matter movement is concerned, it's still a shock to me that in 2020, people are protesting for their basic right. You would think that 60 years after the civil rights movement took place, like, they would have implemented some sorts of protection, but you can see that the institutional racism is still there. So I feel like this goes without saying, but of course I stand in solidarity of the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm not qualified to talk about this, so I will leave a couple of Black creators who have spoken about this, including Jessie from Bow Ties and Books, and Marinas from My Name is Marinas. They made some incredible videos sharing the resources, the donations, the petitions, anything that you can do to help this movement. And I don't really feel like I have much of a say in this matter, because I am not Black, I am not from the US, so I can't really understand the current struggles of the people. But I can relay a brief history of the movement that I read in these three books in the past 2 months. So that's it for now. I really look forward to reading your comments and having a conversation about this, whether it's negative or positive, or just a general conversation about not only supporting global movements, but looking at our own communities and taking action here. So yeah, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys soon.